Hey everyone, I'm Kai Chimura, the host of the Soccerpedia podcast. I've been on a hiatus for a little bit. Just life's been busy, so hopefully, I'll start to get back around making more episodes. But thank you for tuning in. For my guest today, I'll have Jason Longshore, who is the Atlanta United color commentator for 92.9 The Game. So this is, I believe, his third time to appear on the episode or on the podcast. So I'm excited to have him. And without further ado, here's the show. Hey, how's it going, Jason? Can you hear me? Okay. Hey, how's it going? Oh, you're muted.
Hey, what's up, man? Give me 1 second, okay?
Hey, no problem.
I had ordered lunch and it arrived right at the wrong time.
Oh, no problem. No problem. How have you been?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I've just been on kind of a hiatus with the Soccerpedia podcast. It's been life's busy with coaching and teaching. So I figured, with the high school season kind of over for me, that I should, have more time to make more episodes. So I thought first person I should reach out is to you, since
Awesome.
you've been on the show before. So
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Where are you coaching?
I'm over at Druid Hills High School.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yeah. So girls, I coached the girls team, and I've been helping out the boys side since the boys lost last night 2-1. So they got knocked out in the round of 16. So
Round of 16.
yeah. So it was both boys and girls seasons have had or just like any high school team this season has had unique challenges. But at least we're able to have a season and try to build for next year.
Yeah, I'll be doing the state finals over at McEachern. I don't know which classifications we're getting yet. I think
Nice.
They haven't figured that out yet. I think some of it depends on who gets there.
Yeah.
They'll try to do it travel-wise. So I've done Mercer since 2017. The game's down there. So
Nice.
get a little bit closer to home this time around, but we just don't know who we're getting yet.
Cool. I didn't know you did the high school games too.
Yeah, I hooked up with NFHS in 17 and started doing those games, and I would have done it last year, but of course we didn't have it. So it's been fun. I love doing those games. I did a game for a friend, Northview and Johnson, a little while ago, like just a radio style call, the opening round of the state playoffs.
Okay.
Good game. Johnson's really good.
Yeah, that's Gainesville has pretty good soccer up there. So that's it's a good just like a lot of suburbs around Atlanta. There's just a hotbed soccer communities all around. So
for sure.
a growing sport in the state for sure.
Yeah.
So Atlanta United, we're I guess 5 games into the if you count the Champions League or CONCACAF Champions League and then the MLS season itself, just looking back with Gabriel Heinz's record, if you include everything so far, it is 3 wins, a tie, and the recent loss to Philadelphia. How would you rate Gabby Heinz and how he's coaching the team thus far in your observation?
I think it's ahead of schedule. Anytime you come in and you tweak things from a tactical perspective and add elements, it can take a little bit of time. I mean, this is the natural progression for me from Tata Martino to Frank de Boer to Gabriel Heinze, because you get elements of both of them in a package that makes sense here, because you've got some of the tempo and playing at pace like we saw under Tata Martino, but you have some of the foundational structural elements that really worked well under Frank de Boer in 2019. And you get those two married together, and I think you get what you saw in the first half against Philadelphia. It was an excellent 45 minutes that had the team playing in Philadelphia's half almost exclusively, creating chances from their press, but also creating chances from their build-up play. You had 5 saves from Andre Blake in that first half. And I think you saw kind of everything starting to come together. And always the trick is taking that from being able to do it in a 15 or 30 or 45-minute segment to being able to do it for 90 and then do it week after week. And it just takes time. We've seen I think some really good glimpses of all the different elements of Atlanta United that I think we'll see in the big package this year. It just hasn't been always in the same match.
Mhm.
And that's to be expected 5 games in with a new manager and a lot of new players too.
That's absolutely. It seems like there's not hardly anybody outside of I think Guzan and Joseph Martinez that's still around since the inaugural season. Oh yeah, if you include Alec Khan as well. But I think everybody else has been new ever since, or at least arrived. When or speaking recently of the Philly match, Andre Blake had an excellent game. And do you think because the Champions League itself, it's a home and home, and with United trailing at a certain point of the game 1-0, do you think it was necessarily smart for them to just go immediately to try to tie the game back up and allow larger gaps and leave themselves vulnerable for a counterattack? Do you think it would have been smart to, okay, we'll take a 1-0 loss and head it to Philadelphia instead of now being down 3-0?
I think there's a middle ground, and Gabriel Heinze spoke about it after the match. Like, they panicked a little bit, and they didn't really need to in that moment. You give up the goal off a set piece. You've been the better team. The goal is against the run of play. There was no need to really change anything. You didn't need to concede the result at that point, but you didn't need to try to get it back as fast as possible. And I think they just lost their nerve a little bit, which happens. It's a young team. The second goal came from a miscommunication situation with Jurgen Damm and Santiago Sosa, where they had a breakdown in the middle third, and that gave Philadelphia the opportunity to break. Even at that point, you're still in a position where, okay, it's later in the game, but you're still the better team, even though you've been kind of rocked by the 2 goals from Philadelphia. At that point, it becomes difficult. If you're on the road and you're 2-0 down, okay, you shut it down. You expect to come home for the next 90. You can turn that around. If you're at home knowing you're going to go on the road in the second leg and you're down 2-0, you kind of have to go for it. So the third goal, I understand. I get it. The second goal, I think, is that nerve a little bit that you just have to learn as a collective group. We've given up a goal. We've had a lot of chances. We can't lose what we've done so well up to this point just because they got a goal against the run of play. And a young team, that'll happen. I think in the future, it won't happen to Atlanta United, as they have been through this now, and they kind of know what mistakes they made and how they can correct it.
All right. Because being down 3-0 in a leg, usually in the game of soccer, of course, there's been teams that have come back from 3 or more goals down, but usually in most cases, like as soon as a team takes a 3-goal lead, the game is almost, or depending on what point of the game match it is in, it's usually declared kind of out of reach. Because usually if you're in a two-goal deficit, you're still in theory in the match. As long as you score the next goal, then you're right back in it. With Atlanta United being down 3-0, heading into, I think they play Tuesday in the return leg in Philly. What formation do you think Atlanta United will try to go for or play against Philly?
Well, I don't think it's so much the formation, because they changed a little bit to play Philly the first time around, and Heinze spoke about it the day before, where Philadelphia is kind of unique. They play a 4-4-2 diamond, and with 4 central midfielders, it presents a different kind of challenge than you're used to seeing. And Heinze had to adapt. I think he got it right. I mean, I think you look at that first half and you say that the tactics were dead on to play 3 in the back to deal with their 2 up top. Gabriel's always going to want 1 extra defender than they have forwards. And then to keep what is a hallmark of this team's attack, which is to be very, very wide. So you need the 3 up front to have your wingers extremely wide, create extra channels between the wing and your forward, which was Joseph Martinez on Tuesday, for Ezequiel Barco, for Emerson Heinemann to exploit. So you're creating essentially like 5 up front, but in a staggered way. You need to keep those 2 sides. So the back, you need the extra guy. Up front, you need the 3 that can turn into 5. Now then you have to figure out the rest. And against Alawalense, who played 2 up front, and what we could see against New England, who likes to play 2 up front from time to time, it could be a little bit more of a 3-4-3, kind of simple 2 central midfielders to deal with the middle of the park. Against Philly, it was almost a box or a diamond in the midfield with Barco, with Heinemann, with Ibarra. It was very important to have the extra players in there to deal with their 4 central midfielders. And I think it worked. So I don't think there'll be a change in the formation. I think when you look at Atlanta United against Philly on Tuesday, you're coming off of the New England game. The league game probably takes a little more precedent now, being down 3-0. And Heinze said it, he's always going to go with the best group that he can game to game. So he doesn't plan a rotation, but he's going to go with his best team on Saturday night in Foxborough. They're going to stay out on the road. He will play the best team that can perform on Tuesday. And there's a very good chance that will be some players who didn't play on Saturday night because they'll be fresh. So I'm curious to see if some of the players who have been on the fringes, some of the younger players who have worked really hard in preseason, hard early in the season in training, but haven't seen the field as much, if they might get some opportunities on Tuesday with fresh legs running against a Philadelphia team that plays this weekend and will also be a little bit tired coming into that. You see how those go sometimes. You get an early goal and put a team like Philly, who hasn't been in this situation before, on edge. Maybe they have some of the panicking issues that we saw from Atlanta at home when they fell down 1-0.
Mm-hmm. So what should we expect for tomorrow's game against New England? Do you think that we'll probably see Anton Walkes return back into the defensive lineup because he sat out in the Philly game?
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to rotate. I think Alan Franco was good against Philadelphia. I think ultimately it will be Franco and Robinson starting the bulk of the games when they play a line of 4 in the back. But you've got to get Franco fully up to speed, fully fit. He had a good start to the season with Independiente in Argentina. Then he had to quarantine when he arrived here, and he missed some time. So you're kind of getting him back up to full match fitness. The question will just be if he's ready to go and how you want to maybe divide up those minutes with the Tuesday game looming. I think Walkes will play a significant role in one of the 2 games. Don't know which one. Mm-hmm. But it's just all about that rotation. And what's good about Atlanta United this season is you don't have to come up with this plan of rotating okay, Walkes is going to play here, so then Franco can play here. You've got the talent for you to decide game to game, this is our best lineup here. And then you get to the game on Tuesday and you say, he's tired. He looked tired on Saturday. We can go with Walkes because he's played very well. Or we can go with Franco because he's fresh. Mm-hmm. You've got those decisions to make because of the depth. Mm-hmm. This is the deepest Atlanta United team that I've seen in the 5 years of the club's history. And that internal competition for spots will push the team forward.
Absolutely. I've noticed, especially with MLS this season, or of course last season as well, they've increased the amount of substitutes to, I believe, 9. And so looking at every time I'm looking at the team sheet and roster for not starting lineup, but also the bench, I'm like, these guys, some of these guys have had extensive runs and they're coming off the bench. And so competition's pretty fierce. For example, this season, I don't think we've seen Mo Adams at all. And I don't think he's hurt, isn't he?
Yes, he's coming off of sports hernia surgery. He's not quite back yet.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about that. And we still have Mateus Rossetto, and what's his situation? Is he?
So Rossetto is an interesting one. The green card process has been a little bit slower than normal, and he was in the process of getting it, kind of got hung up. Eventually, he has gotten his green card, which helps for the roster, helps him, obviously. But it also meant he had to go to Brazil. He had to come back. He had to quarantine, then join the team again. So he's got to get back up to full fitness. So he's missed a decent bit of time. It's going to take him a minute to get his fitness back up where you want.
And who in what are, let's say, 1 or 2 players in your opinions thus far have been pleasant surprises to you?
And it's funny because I've always talked about George Bello in a really positive way, but I think he really surprised me on Tuesday in the game against Philly because he played one of those central midfield spots. Used to talking about him as a left back, as a wing back. he was able to step out wide when the game called for it on Tuesday, but he played as a central midfielder in that diamond or box midfield of 4, and he looked incredibly comfortable. And he's been able to adapt to this way of playing, the positional way of playing, really fast for a young player. It's been really impressive because young outside backs, so often you see them just overlap all day, straight lines, run forward, get into the attack. He can do that, but he can also pick out a run underneath the winger. He can make the underlap rather than just the overlap. Or he can kind of tuck in and be an extra central midfielder and help the team keep possession. Bello's reading the game really, really well. And I think Anton Walkes is another one. Walkes, got the opportunity because of the issues at center back where you had a couple guys identified and close to a deal, and it didn't happen. The Alan Franco deal dragged on a little bit longer. Then you had to get him quarantined and into the group. And meanwhile, Anton Walkes has just been really steady and really solid. He's good in possession. He's been excellent defensively. And we know that he'll give you the versatility when you need it. He can play at the right side. He can play on the left side. He can even play in the holding midfield if he had to. But as a center back, he's a starting level center back in this league. And you're going to have 3 of those. And sometimes you'll play 3, but a lot of times you'll play 2. Again, that competition will keep Robinson and Franco very sharp, and Walkes will get his minutes too.
And for Joseph Martinez, he, of course, recently returned from ACL injury, and 5 games in, he hasn't scored a goal just yet this season. And so what should we expect as far as when do you think Joseph Martinez will be returning to his former self? That could be kind of difficult to kind of analyze.
Yeah, it's hard to call. Like, I think what we've seen is every game we've seen more glimpses of Joseph getting sharper. I'm not seeing any physical issues. I think his fitness is good. I think his match sharpness, his match rhythm has been the biggest issue because he hadn't played since Nashville last year. And like his anticipation has been off at times, reading the game, making the early run, things like that. But his first half against Philadelphia, like as it went on, I thought he started to get into the flow really, really well. And he had a great sequence where he held up the play, had a little bit of a heavy touch, won it back, and then slipped Marcelino Moreno in with a great through ball. Mm-hmm. Joseph in 2019 showed that he can be more than just a guy who runs the channels and splits 2 defenders and gets a goal inside the 6. He's a guy who can be involved in the build-up play. He can create for others. And in this way of playing, that'll be a very important thing. So on top of getting match fit, match sharp, he's got to get, I think, his head around what Gabriel Heinze is wanting him to do. In that latter part of the first 45, I thought we saw Joseph look like Joseph. Now, the second 45, I don't think really anybody looked like themselves as the game kind of got away from them. And Joseph didn't really see the ball very much. Got to keep getting him involved, and you got to play him as much as his legs can handle while you're building that back up, because you know how it is. You can run, you can be fit, you can pass all the fitness tests. Soccer fitness, game fitness is a different thing, and you can only really get it in matches.
Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of like shifting around different players.
Yeah.
So far it seems like, at least looking at the games and reading like aftermath or after the match analysis, like let's say on social media comments, it seems like the jury is still kind of out on Jürgen Damm and Marcelino Moreno. What are your thoughts of how their season is going so far, and what they could do to improve in the eyes of fans?
Yeah, I think it's weird. I think a lot of people are expecting the wingers to score a lot in the system, and I don't really see it that way so far. I think over time they will get more involved inside the 18. But right now, the focus is using them to spread the field. So when they're picking up the ball, they're picking it up on the touchline, looking to create opportunities. They're playmakers rather than goal scorers. And I think so far, Jürgen Damm's done a pretty good job of that. I think Marcelino Moreno's done a pretty good job of that. There's still room for improvement. As they get more comfortable in those 1v1s, that the way this team is playing, you're trying to create Dom isolated on an outside back, Moreno isolated on an outside back, so they can win the dribble and get forward and unbalance the defense. I think as they get more comfortable, they'll add more variety into what they do. Like Moreno likes to come inside a lot. He needs to take it at times down the end line and put in a cross. Dom likes to do the opposite. He likes to take it to the end line, put in the cross. When he can cut inside and come across and slip a pass through or hit Brooks Lennon on the overlap when he comes inside, stuff like that, it's harder to defend. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is just time. A lot of it is just realizing where your teammates are going to be in this way of playing, what your best options are. And again, you can do it over and over again in drills, but you have to get this match experience under your belt. You know, Pep Guardiola's teams have gone through it. I think Bielsa's teams have gone through it over time. You start with a foundation and you add more to it as you go. We're still in the very early phases with the way that this team is starting to play.
Mm-hmm. And what are, of course, was a week ago, Atlanta United defeated Chicago Fire 3-1. Barco scored easily a goal of the season contender. What do you think this could be the season where Barco kind of breaks out and could potentially, maybe in the future, this could lead him to a move to Europe or another higher profile league?
If he stays healthy, yes. I think this way of playing is perfectly suited to him. I think him playing centrally is a perfect fit for him. He's one of the team leaders in tackles, which is something that I don't think any of us expected for Ezequiel Barco when he arrived in Atlanta. But he will get opportunities to go to goal, and he will get opportunities to create for others, create chances for others. So that central position, if you get the spread of the team like you want, you get those wingers wide, and Joseph is running the middle of the park, Barco and Heinemann can fill in those gaps on either side of him. And it's really tough to defend all of that all the way across the field, touchline to touchline. You want to give those ISO moments for Barco, especially for Moreno, for Dom. But Barco so far has been outstanding. If he can stay healthy, and we've seen these moments from him in the past. I think back to 2019 before the U20 World Cup, where he was on fire in New England. In Kansas City. He had 2 great matches in a short period of time, went to the U20 World Cup, was excellent, and then came back and basically just got kicked out of a game in Columbus. Bad foul on the touchline. I don't even think it was a yellow card. Gets kicked on the inside of the knee, and he had problems with the knee the rest of the year from a contact injury. Last year, he just couldn't stay healthy. It was like nagging things. So if he can stay healthy and get game after game after game of consistency, yeah, he's a best 11 player. And if he's a best 11 player in this league at his age and with everything we've seen so far, he'll get offers. I think the club will be in a position to then make sure the offers are where they want them to be. And that's the part we really don't know, because the market is so weird at the moment with COVID, with teams having financial issues, but some teams being in a good position to buy and trying to take advantage of that. You know, what is the market going to be for a player like Ezequiel Barco if he does what we expect him to do in 2021? I don't know.
And what's his contract length at right now? Like, what's his
He's
deal?
got more years, but I don't know how many. He's not in the last year of his contract right now. So the club's still in a really good position to listen to offers in the summer, and I think to listen to offers next winter. And then I don't know if next year is the last year of his deal, or if there's a year or an option year past that.
Okay. And with what's your take on Sosa or Heinemann thus far this season?
Heinemann's been really good. Heinemann does a lot of, I think, selfless work off the ball that doesn't show up in the stats, but his movement off the ball, top notch. Defensively, he's been good. He's really filled the role of that box to box, but more attack minded this year. I think if Barco plays well and draws attention, if Moreno and Dom, as they're positioned, always draw attention in the 1v1s, Joseph, will draw attention. somebody's going to be left open a good bit. And a lot of times it's been Emerson Heinemann here lately. His volley against Philadelphia, outstanding. He's had good chances. He's got a goal under his belt. Heinemann feels like a guy who could be a real surprise on the goal scoring count this year because he's going to have opportunities inside the 18 that he wasn't getting before because he was playing in a little bit deeper position. Sosa's been outstanding. Sosa was a great signing, and Atlanta United gets, a little lucky that River Plate wanted to keep some of their veteran players in those holding midfield roles and felt like there wasn't a spot for Sosa. Mm-hmm. He had to play center back at River a decent bit. He played as an 8 at River a decent bit. We see here that he's perfect for that holding midfield, defensive midfield spot. He can drop into the back line when the opposition plays 2 up top. That's easy for him. That's comfortable. And his passing is good. But he gives you that combination that you don't often see of a guy who's great on the ball, can hit the long pass, can dribble a little bit, can go to goal himself, but can also get a little nasty when he needs to. He can get stuck into a tackle. He can get physical. He's good in the air. Kind of gives you the whole package. And to be able to, with the way that Gabriel Heinze wants to play, with a holding midfielder needing to drop into the back line, both in possession, but also to defend from time to time, Sosa's the perfect fit for that style of play.
And it seemed like that you mentioned that he had play in the center back role for River Plate for a few games. Yeah, I did notice that when I think it was the Philly game in Chicago, because Atlanta United, the formation I've at least seen, they usually go with somewhat of a hybrid 3-4-3 with Sosa, sometimes like shifting.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. I think a lot of people are misreading this. I think it's a 4-3-3. In general. So the base is 4-3-3, 4 across the back, 1 holding midfielder, 2 central midfielders in front of him, wingers, and the forward. Now, when the opposition plays 2 up top, Sosa has dropped into the back line to become the 3rd defender. When he drops in, when the team's building up play, when they're in possession, he's not really a center back. He's a midfielder dropping in to help build up play. But when the opponent plays 2 up top, they want 1 free man. They don't want to have 2 center backs against 2 forwards isolated. They always want an extra man. So Sosa against Alajuelense in the first leg in Costa Rica and against Philadelphia played as a center back. He played truly as a center back who, when the opportunity would present itself, would step forward when he could. But center back in those games, holding midfielder in the others, who would drop back and defend when the situation called for it. He's that guy who can flip if it's a line of 3 or a line of 4 in the back and make it work either way. Formations, all of that. I mean, I know everybody gets hung up on it. It's overrated, especially the way this is being played. There's certain principles at work, but if you want to call it 3 in the back or 4 in the back or 3-5-2 or 5-3, I mean, you can go whichever way you want. It's all the same. It's all the same. It's all about those principles being consistent.
And last but not least, what how are you thinking of how Brad Guzan is playing so far this season?
So far, so good. It's a different role for him in the build-up because he's much more involved, and we're seeing a lot more passes for Brad Guzan, and not just the same kind of longer passes that I think he's really good at. He's had some games where he's connecting on over 50% of his long passes over 25 yards. That's tough to do. Not many players do that. Not many goalkeepers do that. He's been excellent, but he's making shorter passes too. He's playing short on goal kicks. He's involved in the build-up to deal with the other team's press. Those are things that are probably a little newer to him, and he's soaked it up really, really well. That's going to be essential going forward because the goalkeeper in the style of play, it's not Manuel Neuer like an extra field player. But in certain moments where you're trying to build up against 2 forwards, yeah, you want to.
Oh, I think cut out for a second. All right, we're back for round 2.
Yeah, the power surged. Like I heard it pop. I was like, oh man, no good. Sorry about that.
No problem. I was like, because I first figured it was something on my end, but all right, we're Back with it. I think we left off from Guzan. He's having a good season, veteran, somewhat changing his style of play, being more involved with the build-up play. I think, didn't he recently sign like a contract extension that he's here for another couple of years?
He did last year, right before the season. So he's still got time under contract, but now you've got some good competition. Alec Cann's always shown that he's ready to step in if needed. Ben Lingard got a first team deal this year, moving up from Atlanta United 2. He's 25. He showed really well for the Twos last year. And we saw Rocco Rios Novo in CONCACAF Champions League. Now he's here on loan from Lanús in Argentina, and you're going to have to make a decision at the end of that. But he doesn't take up an international slot because he's a U.S. citizen, was born in Los Angeles. And so far, you like what you've seen from Rocco Rios Novo. Now, in addition to that, Vicente Reyes is part of your academy. He played for the Twos on last Saturday in Louisville. He started to get more time at 17 years old. And you've got a couple of goalkeepers that you could sign to homegrown deals who are active in college right now. So the goalkeeper depth chart is actually pretty large for Atlanta United at the moment. But Brad Guzan is at the head of that, and I think he will be for another few years.
Okay. And some players that we've signed this season, I think Ronald Hernandez, the Venezuelan defender, right? And of course, we've had Eric Lopez. I think he made a brief appearance off the bench. And so what do you think their roles will be remaining or throughout this season?
Pushing for time. I think Ronald Hernandez, barely played in 2020 at Aberdeen. It was a really tough time to make a move for him on the last day of the window at the end of January, because not even 5-6 weeks later, everything shut down. And that's a tough culture shock to go from and be in a place that you're unfamiliar with. You just got there. You don't really have any friends in the team yet, and you're on lockdown. It was really difficult for him. And I think the style of play in Scotland was a little difficult for him to adjust to because of that. So he's got to get back into rhythm. Eric Lopez is also very young. I mean, he's still a teenager, and he's only got 12, 13 professional games under his belt. So the expectations on Eric Lopez have been way out of whack because of the transfer fee that was paid for him. Very promising young player, a lot of expectations for him down the road, but let him grow into the role a little bit. I think we'll see him, in bits and pieces this year, unless he has a breakthrough and jumps in and jumps forward and shows it in training and then starts to show it in games. But both of those guys are very important, along with the rest of the depth, to push the guys that are getting the playing time right now. Ronald Hernandez playing well in training will push Brooks Lennon. Eric Lopez doing well in training will push the wingers, will push Joseph Martinez. Everybody wants to play. There's only so many spots. Right now, you've got a full 11 behind your starting 11 that wants to be in that team day in and day out. So the competition internally will push this team to greater heights.
You mentioned Brooks Lennon. I know he got hurt in the Chicago Fire game. Was there any updates on his injury and his status?
He's been back to training, but with a head injury, it's always hard to guess what it looks like, because you never know how a player's going to react. You can have a couple days of training and then start to have some symptoms again. But he has started training again, which is a great sign. It was a scary collision. As somebody who's had a bad concussion themselves, like, I'm really sensitive to those kinds of situations. You have to be really careful, I think, in the way you jump to conclusions about head injuries. He came back in and looked okay until he had one header and he put his hand to his eye, and I couldn't tell if he was actually like checking where his eye swelled up really quick. I can't remember a time that I've seen a black eye pop up that fast on somebody. It was a little hard to tell. Was it a concussion issue or was it because of a bruise, which are two very different things? He was pulled at halftime. Gabriel Heinze talked about, didn't really like what they were seeing from him at halftime, didn't feel comfortable bringing him back in. It was a concussion substitution, which the league now is trialing the new rule that will allow you to make 2 subs outside of your normal 5 for concussion subs. The opponent will then get subs as well to go along with that. It's a good initiative, and it gives you the ability to not have to push guys back out, or the ability to stick with guys where you're not 100% sure. I think a lot of people, when it comes to head injuries, like think immediately that it's a concussion or not. You don't. Somebody can get hit in the head and it's not a concussion. Somebody cannot get hit in the head and it can be a concussion. You can have whiplash. Symptoms sometimes show up immediately. Sometimes they don't show up for days. You can have somebody who plays and then later goes into a concussion protocol situation. It's such a hard thing to understand if you're outside of it, if you've never experienced it. Lennon, it's hard to set a timetable. We know he's back in training. That's a great sign. We don't know if there's been any issues or, if he's continued to progress through training or if they've had to slow him down a little bit because of symptoms. It will be very touch and go until he is fully back.
It was a shame too, because I think he was having a pretty solid season up to that point. Do you think I can't remember? Did Jonathan Bornstein, did he even get a yellow card for that one?
He didn't. I don't think it was intentional. I think he was late. He tried to spin out of it. Like Bornstein tried to turn, so he didn't make as much contact. I think in some ways it made it a little worse. But Bornstein's not a dirty player, and I think he checked on him immediately. Brad Gazan came running out. Gazan and Bornstein are teammates from the U.S. men's national team days. I think his reputation helped him there. I'm okay with it not being a yellow. I didn't see any malicious intent in it. I think it was just unfortunate.
I was I knew Bornstein made a return back to him. I was like, wow, this guy is still playing, but
still playing well too. Yeah. Still playing very well.
Yeah. I want to shift focus on the collapse of that Super League that was supposed to happen. I guess it's now kind of up in the air. Of course, most of those, or a lot of those clubs, especially the English clubs, Manchester United, Liverpool, Tottenham, I think they all have American ownership, I believe, and I think they were trying to kind of replicate an American model with as far as having a league without any kind of it's teams that were franchises that are joined in without any type of promotion or having to, regardless of how bad or how good your season is, you're automatically in that league. What was your reaction to when that rumor started to kind of turn into a larger avalanche?
Yeah, it's a complicated thing because this isn't the first time it's come up. It's the first time it's gotten to this point, but it's not the first time the idea of a Super League has come up. It's been a common discussion point for probably a decade, and many clubs, including Bayern Munich and PSG and many others, have been involved in those conversations over the years. But this one, I think a lot of people have honed in on the English clubs and the American involvement. Andrea Agnelli from Juventus and Florentino Perez from Real Madrid were the two really driving this. Yeah. And Florentino Perez was the one who was out in front on a lot of it. No American involvement with them. They're looking at their club situations. And I think it's easy to discount all of it because of our traditions in the game, because of our history in the game. They went about it the wrong way, and the structure was poor, and there's too many holes in it. I mean, you didn't have a TV partner yet, which it would never work if you don't have that. There were way too many question marks around it. But the idea of bigger teams playing each other more often is not a crazy idea when you look at the financial ramifications of it. You know, it's one thing, I think, for fans to talk about, you know, wanting things to be the way they are, not wanting more games, not wanting a Super League. But you would see it in some of the responses to statements that clubs were putting out saying, we're out of this, we're not doing it. Statements, I think, to Liverpool, like, okay, go sign Mbappe then. Well, it takes money to do that, right? And when you're talking about the financial ramifications of COVID, and for some of these teams, the financial ramifications of bad decisions like Barcelona, the money's got to come from somewhere. And the fans want the biggest players at these big teams if they're a fan of that team. And the players want the money, a lot of money. And something's got to give, because there's too many situations now where clubs are in precarious situations. You know, even huge clubs, because of COVID, which nobody saw affecting the game the way that it has, nobody saw it coming in that way. It's accelerated or exacerbated situations. Like Barcelona is in a worse position because of COVID. Real Madrid is now going from a good position to a maybe not so good position financially because of COVID. Tottenham built a stadium not expecting to have a global pandemic, and now bills are coming due.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's a lot of things in the game that there's questions. And Florentino Perez and Andrea Agnelli said a lot of crazy things, and the idea was really poorly structured, poorly introduced. But there were some things that were said that I think the game would really benefit from listening to and figuring out, how can we still create the balance, but understand that everything can benefit if you create this the right way. Not pulling out of domestic leagues, because I think that was what most people assumed was step 2.
Mm-hmm.
Was, you know, this was supposed to replace the Champions League. That's the way it was presented. And it was a bunch of games. I think step 2, most people assumed, even though the Super League didn't say it, was that then they would pull out of domestic leagues.
Mm-hmm.
That's never going to fly.
Oh yeah,
that's just never going to fly. But you've got to find the balance of, do you really need, and now you're going to have a larger Champions League with more games. Mm-hmm. Do you really need more games for Real Madrid to play, you know, the Croatian champions or the Danish champions or the Icelandic champions? Mm-hmm. Does that benefit anybody outside of having more games on TV? Mm-hmm. I don't know if it does. I mean, you hear Pep Guardiola and other managers talk about it. They want fewer games, but more meaningful ones, more competitive ones. Okay, Super League wasn't going to solve that either in its presentation, because it was going to be more games, but against top teams. Can't you all get on the same page and figure this out? If Champions League as it's currently structured is the way you want to go, do you need to have more play-in rounds to get to a group stage that is a little more streamlined, to where it is more of the cream of the crop, mm-hmm. to where it's not a group where you're going to play 6 games and there might be 2 compelling games in the group, mm-hmm. that people are going to sit down and watch. Mm-hmm. It's a tough thing, because I know we all get, you know, kind of really hung up on, it's always been like this, we can't change it. Mm-hmm. I think there are lessons to be learned from potentially making changes to make it better, because, I mean, I can tell you from my experience, there are leagues that I don't watch as much because there's not as many compelling games in it domestically. Mm-hmm. Germany at times is a very boring league because Bayern Munich's going to win. Mm-hmm. And they're going to sign the best players from the other teams or the best manager, like in this case, Julian Nagelsmann. Yeah. England's been great this year, but there's been years where Liverpool and Manchester City ran away from everybody, and it wasn't compelling to watch them beat people up. You know, it wasn't a good game. Spain, I mean, El Clasico is amazing, but when Atleti's good, cool, you get another team in the mix. So many years we've seen those two run away from everybody. Juventus won 9 straight Serie A titles. Like, that's not good. Mm-hmm. And then those teams want the Champions League because that's where it is compelling, but they don't want to play the small teams in Champions League that isn't compelling. Mm-hmm. There's a balance somewhere in here if people can get over the egos, get over the history, and understand that it can be tweaked and it can be bettered, and do the right things for the game as a whole. Some clubs just aren't as big as others.
That's true.
It's a fact.
And I think it's more of like there's more of those not as big teams as there are the cream of the crop of Chelsea, Manchester United, and I think for like countries that are, you know, like the Dinamo Zagrebs of the world, or the Malmös, or the Ajax. Or Ajax is a big club, but still, it's just, I think for any team that's that has this kind of either a big fish in a small pond, or or let's say Leicester City having a good, or West Ham United, they're having a good season right now. And for, I think the issue was that the Super League like locked out of those possibilities from ever happening, even if Manchester United or an Inter Milan would have had a bad season, but they're automatically guaranteed because they're a
Right.
global
But
brand.
but here's the thing about the Super League portion of it, in England anyway. Since I think it's since 2000, and I want to say it's 2004. There's only been one non-six Super League teams, Big Six. There's only been one Big Six, non-Big Six team that made the Champions League ever. It was Leicester the year after they won.
Yeah,
that's it. So it kind of already is a Super League in a lot of ways, and it's the Champions League. It's more of an issue with the format. And I really think that UEFA was made to look like the good guy in all of this. And UEFA's not the good guy. UEFA's got tons of problems. And FIFA's got tons of problems. There's things they need to do better. They need to sit down and get over the fighting part of it, because they were working on revamps of the Champions League. And I think that created a lot of this friction. Is people like Agnelli and Ed Woodward lied to UEFA. Like they flat out lied. They said, we're going to benefit, we're going to work together and grow the game and make Champions League better. And then they turned around and did this. So I get that. Everybody's upset. Okay, let's have a cooling off period. And then go in and sit down and say, we hear you. We want to keep it this way, but we want to tweak it to try to benefit everybody. If it means like there is a group stage to get to the elite level, okay. If it means there's like an additional play-in group stage or something, okay. Figure it out so there's a chance for your Dinamo Zagrebs, your smaller champions from all over Europe to get to the elite level. Leave the opening, but then have a group stage that serves what the managers want, which is less games. Have it like now where it's 6, but you're not playing throwaway games in that group. You're not playing the champions of Cyprus. You're not playing, the second place team from Greece that got in. You're not doing that, because those games don't sell. They don't really benefit anything outside of being volume for a TV deal. Can you make it better and serve more purposes? And teams who don't get into that Champions League elite level then go into the Europa League, and they still get to keep playing in Europe. And you do the same in Europa League, and they've already added a third level now with this UEFA Conference League that's going to start next year. So you have the group stage to play into the elite level of the Europa League. You don't make it, you go into the Conference League, and you still get these international games. So UEFA can sell the freight of all these games to TV partners, but you protect the elite playing the elite, which is what we all get excited about. Like think about how many games you watch from Spain every year. Can probably guarantee that 2 of them are Real Madrid, Barcelona every single time. Maybe there's a third, maybe there's a fourth, maybe there's a fifth, unless you're a huge fan of that league. You want to see the big teams play the big teams. If you're a fan of, not really a fan of that league, like if you're a diehard Valencia fan, different conversation entirely. But then for you, you're going to look at games in Italy, and you're going to look at the big games. You're not going to look at Sassuolo playing, Parma. That game's not going to be exciting to you unless you're a fan of one of those teams. If it's Juve playing Inter with the title on the line, probably going to watch.
But do you think, like, with that being said, do you think that if you continuously see big teams playing, or the same big teams playing same big teams, do you think that the novelty of that could wear off if they play too many times in a year?
Well, that's why I think the idea of the Super League was failed. But it hasn't worn off with what we see in Champions League. I mean, we've seen Bayern and Barcelona plenty of times in big games. We've seen, even in Europa League, I mean, you can go back and look at history with Manchester United and Roma, and you've got games to say, oh, well, they beat them really bad this time. They beat them really bad this time. Like, you're seeing it already. So I think that idea is in the context of playing a league where you play them every single year. It could. It could. It's hard to know. But right now in Champions League, you're seeing these teams play one another consistently. You're seeing these matchups consistently because they're the biggest teams and they're getting further along in the tournament and they're always there. It's not the idea of it changing everything is more structural to me than it is about the actual reality of how often big teams play big teams. They're already doing it because they're always getting to Champions League anyway.
I think it's just more of like the I don't know. It just seemed like from some certain comments I saw was like that because soccer and its roots, and it goes back to just the history of it, that soccer was developed essentially from the working class people, and then now with of course, as the game has modernized and with large TV sponsorships and owners with billions of dollars in net worth, that it just for a lot of people it seemed like that soccer has gone kind of away from the roots in a way, and it kind of
But the Premier League already did that in '92 when they broke away from the Football League because it was over money. You already have those things in the game. It's I don't think you can go back. And I think the idea that like soccer is unique in that aspect, it's not true. I mean, go back and read the original stories of baseball when it was getting started in this country, which didn't have a promotion relegation component, but was absolutely the working man's game. The American pastime idea is really true. Like that's what baseball was. Football was probably even more of the American, hard workers game, because like the Green Bay Packers were literally a packing company. Like you had those kind of situations. So I think sport as a whole has become business, and it's not going to go away, but it doesn't mean that you still don't enjoy one big business playing another big business on the field with the greatest players in the world there to watch. But it also doesn't mean that you can't enjoy two neighborhood teams playing in a great game, or hear two high school teams playing in a great match, or, that's what I love about the sport is I can watch Atlanta United play in a big game and enjoy it. I can turn on the TV and watch the Champions League final and enjoy it. And I can go to a high school playoff game and enjoy that. The game's the game. I think it's all the dressing around it at times that maybe distracts from it, but it doesn't change it. It's still the same.
And with what do you think of like now with soccer, like having all these TV or the TV deals that's been around for a while? Do you think that very like within the past like decade or half decade that it's getting harder or more, at least more difficult to access watching soccer on TV?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you do it. Like, I think it's more accessible in a lot of ways, but maybe you're paying a little bit more to access it the way you want. I have access to more leagues and more teams around the world than I've ever had in my life. And I'm a junkie. Like, I mean, I'll watch the Ecuadorian league, which I love watching some of the games from there. I watch the Argentine league probably more than anything outside of MLS. Watching Copa Libertadores and Copa Sudamericana and watching games from places that I don't know the league very well. I enjoy that. So yeah, it costs me. I've got to have different subscription services for different leagues, but it's kind of where we're going with the way we consume TV anyway, because I think what you're starting to see is less of the big cable option with 500 channels and more of the, I'm going to get this one that's got what I want here, and I'm going to get this one, and I'm going to get this one, and I'm going to get this one. And this is kind of how we're consuming it. I think the access is greater than ever before, but yeah, you might have to pay the money out to it a little bit differently.
I think it's just more of like, there's just so many, like you mentioned, like buying like a service from here, service from here. I just think it's like, sometimes it's, it feels like it's like too, it's like there's so many like streaming services, like, okay, gotta make sure, okay, gotta remember my password username for this one and this one and this one. It's like, sometimes I'm
paying less for TV now than I was 10 years ago though. And so even with all that, I'm still paying less. So I'll take it.
And do you have Peacock, by the way?
Yeah, I added it for some of the games from England. Kind of a nice little bonus to add the WWE network into it. So that's kind of cool. I was able to watch WrestleMania because of having Peacock. So that was fun. But yeah, it's Peacock Paramount Plus, which has the NWSL, has the Argentine League now, which I enjoy in English, which I'd never been offered here on a regular basis. So yeah, I went and plumped for both of those. I have Fanatis, which gets me BN Sports and Goal TV and the Brazilian League, and ESPN Plus is kind of a must if you're an MLS fan because it's got MLS, it's got USL Championship, it's got USL League One, along with Italy until it moves to Paramount Plus. So those are the big ones for me. Those are the four that I have. It's funny, like everybody keeps asking me if I've watched Ted Lasso, and the one streaming service I really don't have is Apple TV. That's the one that hasn't got me yet.
I don't know. I just it's for me. I'll only have ESPN Plus because I usually like to watch the either international friendlies or the World Cup qualifiers from from UEFA, and whenever Finland plays, I'll go and watch them. Because I don't know, I think for me it's like somewhat of a nostalgia thing because I remember growing up, like whenever I wanted to watch Champions League, like I remember there was a Fox Soccer channel, and then the Champions League used to air on Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2, and now they shifted over to CBS, and it's like I don't I don't have it. It's just
all about that money.
It is all about the money.
But that's what it comes back to, though, with those Champions League teams. They want to make more money on TV, so then they can go sign Kylian Mbappe or Neymar or maybe Lionel Messi, and it's what drives it. Like I think a lot of people got bent out of shape at the clubs with the Super League idea and trying to maximize money. The players are making a lot of money, and then at some point, that's going to have to come down a little bit because the financials. I think the TV money is going to dry up. I think that you're going to hit a wall. You're going to get to the end of the bubble here at some point, and you're not going to see the same huge TV deals. So something's got to give at that point. And if it's some version or modified salary cap or transfer cap or just teams say,
yeah,
we can't afford that.
Yeah.
We literally can't afford that. I know our fans want us to go sign Kylian Mbappe. We can't cut the check because if we do, we're going to have to lay off 100 people.
Yeah, it's just because of course pandemic has definitely affected severely a lot of clubs, and even then, even if without the pandemic, of course, like some of the larger teams have big stadiums that it can fill at full capacity that can cover certain players' wages, but not all of them. They have to also rely on merchandise sales and maybe different advertisements or commercial deals as well. So looking at some of these superstar players' salaries, I'm like, geez, they make more in a week than I do in a year or 2 years.
In a decade.
A decade. And I'm like, I wonder that too. Like, how is that sustainable?
Unless teams find more money and find more revenue, which is what they were looking to do. I don't know if they ultimately would have made more revenue. I think that was questionable with the structure of the Super League idea. I don't think it was actually going to work as well as maybe they thought it would. But there's only so much. Like it's going to come to a point where I think salaries are going to have to come down. Transfer fees are going to have to come down because it's just not sustainable the way it's going. And you're going to see more situations like Bolton, like Portsmouth,
Sunderland,
Valencia right now, Sunderland, where they went down with financial issues. You've got Schalke in Germany, which, you get teams that get relegated now. I know the romance of Pro Rel is great. But some of these big clubs, when they get relegated, they're not coming back.
Yeah.
Kaiserslautern in Germany is a sad story. Leeds is a great story now, but how many different owners did they go through to get to this point? Yeah. I mean, it's scary because when the bottom falls out, there's far more sad stories than there are Leicester stories winning a title coming up like that. They're really the only one.
And with just reverting back to Super League, like with so originally, when I looked at the list of teams that were thinking about joining this Super League, and some notable names did not join in, to my surprise, was PSG. I'm thinking, like, if PSG of all teams said no, there's something wrong. There's something so wrong with this. Why
100%.
why did PSG not join?
I don't know. There was some weird things going on around that. And I think PSG basically didn't buy into the idea. They didn't think it was structured well enough. They were skeptical of the people driving that ship. But they were also very different than Bayern was and the German clubs. The German clubs could never get it approved by the way they're structured. The 50+1 idea, they were never going to get their membership to vote for it. So they weren't happening, even though the talk that Bayern Munich was never interested in a Super League, that's just not true. There's documentation out there of them being part of conversations around this. Older ones, not this specific situation. But PSG, there was a lot of talk coming out of France that they didn't join. They specifically didn't join. They said no, or they said let's see, but they left that door cracked. And if it had gotten off the ground and it had been well received, I wouldn't have been surprised to see PSG join. But the fact that they didn't from day one shows you the skepticism over the original group and the original plans.
And now, with where do you see soccer going in the next or in this upcoming, or this decade, like throughout the 2020s? Like, where do you see it going?
I think you will see more combined leagues, like the idea that Belgium and the Netherlands are going to do a joint league. Immediately after the Super League collapse, there was talk about bringing Celtic and Rangers into the English pyramid. You've had the conversation about MLS and Liga MX for quite a while. I think you'll see more of that. I think it will be a necessity to get bigger teams playing bigger teams in a different way. I think there is going to have to be a reckoning in Europe about how much money they're spending, because it's not going to last. And you're going to see a big club in one of the top 5 leagues go bankrupt mid-season. I mean, you're going to see some like horrifying story where somebody can't play their games because they're out of money. You've got Den Haag right now in the Netherlands who's in that situation, but they're at the bottom of the table. But they can't pay their next 2 months of salaries, and basically the club is available for anyone who wants to put a couple million euro into it. It's that sad. So that's going to happen at a bigger level. I don't know if they will ever go to any kind of a salary cap or transfer cap. I think they should look at what La Liga is doing, where they're trying to tie how much you're approved to spend on what your revenue history is, to kind of protect teams a little bit. We see Barcelona can still screw it up. They're in a huge financial problem. But you're going to have to see some financial changes in Europe. I think there's the potential in other parts of the world for a lot of growth, though. You know, I could absolutely see a more unified North and South America in terms of World Cup qualifying, in terms of the Copa Libertadores. You know, I could definitely see that, because the South American countries would benefit from the money in Mexico and in the United States. Those countries and teams would benefit from the competition and the history in South America. There's a lot to gain there. There's talk about a Super League in Africa, which I think could be huge, because so many of those countries and leagues have one big team, and they don't really grow from playing in the domestic league. They need to find better ways to have more competition, and maybe a Super League is the right way to go in Africa. Asia could look at things. I think in the next 10 years, we'll see more acceptance in the sport of new ways of thinking, especially about the business and about the money side of it, to be more sustainable. You know, that's the biggest fear that I have, is that the game's in a great place. You've got more talent developing than ever before. It's more accessible worldwide. I mean, it's in a place that I never thought we'd see it in this country. And I never thought it'd be as easy to see the best of the best on a regular basis. I mean, I could turn on the TV right now and find 5 games from around the world to watch if I wanted to. But my fear is that if things don't get kind of corralled a little bit financially, that's going to go away fast, and then you're going to have to regroup. They need to make sure the people who are those powers that be, they need to make sure that they're putting in things in place now to protect the game and protect its growth, because it can continue to grow, but it needs to focus on sustainability. That's been lost a little bit as it's grown so fast.
And before we wrap things up, Atlanta United plays tomorrow in New England. And what is your prediction of how that game's going to go?
It's a tough one because we've seen teams struggle after CONCACAF Champions League. You get a little bit of a CCL hangover at times, but I think Atlanta will be out to prove something after their disappointment in Champions League. New England's a tricky opponent, though. They're very good in the attack. I think you can get goals on them. I think there will be goals in the game. I'm thinking it will be Atlanta 3-2. I think it'll be kind of a wild one because I think Gustavo Bo, Carlos Heel, 2 of the most talented players in the league. But I think Atlanta can create goals getting in behind this New England backline as they're still figuring things out. Atlanta's had good success against New England historically. The Revs have never beaten Atlanta. I think that will continue, but I think Atlanta will have to sweat it. I think it'll be a tough one.
And they're both off to. I mean, it's early on in the season. They both have 1 win and 1 tie. It's sitting at the top of the table with Montreal. I'd say since it's a away game, it's always tough to travel on the road after game against Philly and then game on against Philly on Tuesday. I think I predict a 1-1 draw.
Wouldn't be surprised by that. I could see a little bit of both teams canceling each other out. I think both want to go for this. New England didn't create a lot of chances against DC. I think they'll be out to prove something too. I think it could get pretty wide open, but if New England is a little cagier and Atlanta has to defend more and get numbers behind the ball, 1-1's not out of the realm of possibility. I think there'll be more goals in it, though.
All right. Well, Jason, thank you very much for having time to appear on the podcast. Hopefully, Atlanta United can eke out a win tomorrow and look to get a miraculous comeback against Philly in the Champions League Tuesday. So,
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Thanks for coming on, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Anytime, and thanks for bearing with me with the power going out and technical difficulties. Hopefully, everything comes out okay.
I think it will. And I'll have this podcast up soon enough. But thanks again, and
cool.
Take care.
All good. Thank you.
Go on. Bye.
See ya.